So by now you may have seen my review, and after having a day to really assess the criminal movie that Captain Marvel is and the criminal movie that I saw, let's discuss some theories that I have as to how this was allowed to be released and expand even more on why this is so criminal. If you've seen my other videos on Captain Marvel, I will be repeating some talking points initially. This was odd from the jump, even if we remove Brie Larson's admittance that she was using this for her own personal activism. For starters, Carol Danvers only recently became Captain Marvel like 6 or so years ago. Up until then, she mainly went by Miss Marvel. She never was that prominent of a character, but she was far more embraced as Miss Marvel than Captain Marvel. She has had like 7 reboots to issue number 1, and nobody is really buying her comics. Even with the release of the movie, they really overshipped a lot of the recent first and second issues, but go to any comic book store and they're hanging off of the damn rack in abundance because they were massively overshipped. Again, she was never really embraced in the first place, which is why nobody outside of comic book fans knew who she was when it was announced that she was going to be having her own movie. So she's like the 7th Captain Marvel and arguably the most disliked. But Marvel tried to force her upon everybody, and they did all that they could to set her up for success. And that's what makes Captain Marvel unique and why this is really questionable. Iron Man was embraced by the comic book community and at least known by some of the general public, as he's been depicted multiple times outside of the comics before he even got a movie. He is an original member of the Avengers, the Hulk. He's the Hulk, right? Iconic character known by American culture and an original member of the Avengers. Captain America, iconic character and known by virtually everybody. Thor, obviously based on the Norse god of thunder and totally recognizable and an original member of the Avengers. All of these characters existed since the 60s. Spider-Man is Spider-Man, and I don't even have to mention his icon status because he's probably the most recognizable Marvel superhero ever. Then we have Black Panther, debuted in the mid-1960s. In Fantastic Four issue number 52, if I'm not mistaken, which I covered on this channel. First prominent black superhero alongside Hulk, Thor, and Iron Man. They have all been part of the Avengers since the 60s. So this leaves us with 2 other solo films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First, we start with Ant-Man. Ant-Man is of a lower tier than the others, considering he's not as known outside of the comics, but he's well known in the comics and is a founding member of the Avengers. But that's Hank Pym, right? Which is the older mentor of Scott Lang, who Paul Rudd plays in the movies. Now, Scott didn't come on the scene until right around the same exact time Miss Marvel emerged with her powers in the late 1970s. So the OG Ant-Man is of course recognizable more than Miss or Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel. Then you have Doctor Strange, another OG comic book character, well embraced by the comic book community, but wasn't that known really outside of it. However, he did appear multiple times in both film, video games and cartoons way before he got a movie. So he was at least semi-known. He's also more important to the Infinity Gauntlet arc in the comics, but it isn't up for dispute. He was always, he has always been embraced by the comic book community more than Carol Danvers, who only really appears outside of the comics like once outside of this past recent, decade. So of all the people with solo films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, she is the least popular, least embraced, and the most out of place. She's closest to Scott Lang's Ant-Man, but Scott Lang was never made to be that important, but he at least wears the suit. The original suit of the original Ant-Man and original Avenger, Hank Pym. So he does have some historical context. Carol doesn't. So the Guardians of the Galaxy team is based on the one that was established within the recent decade or so. They are unlike Captain Marvel because it isn't a solo film. And the Guardians, just like Ant-Man, were never made to be like these very important ultimate heroes. Plus, the Guardians have 2 members that were very crucial in Thanos' history. Drax the Destroyer, he was created by Thanos' grandfather, Kronos, to specifically eliminate Thanos. And Nebula was prominent in the original Infinity Gauntlet arc as she's supposedly his granddaughter, and she caught Thanos slipping and took the gauntlet off of Thanos' body when he momentarily trapped all of those cosmic beings and became really one with the universe. She is actually the one that's responsible for bringing back half of the population. Maybe she does it in the upcoming movie, I don't know. So the historical context with their members is there, but again, they were never made out to really be these ultimate heroes like they make Captain Marvel to be. So Captain Marvel is boosted and made to be this super strong, important hero, right? Though she was so unpopular in the comics, and she has no historical context with Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet arc. In fact, she wasn't even there. She was forced upon us and nobody asked for her. And like I've been really spelling out for you guys, her setup is unique. She's relatively unliked and given a solo film that was placed between the two biggest events. She was lazily wrote in and has the most out of place movie when you think about it. But they didn't just avoid the source material, they crapped on it. There are probably going to be idiots in the comments that straw man and try to equal out the nonsense of Captain Marvel by saying that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a different universe and they aren't just like the comics. Nobody is expecting it to be exactly like the comics, nor does the other movies getting like something wrong or some core thing wrong dismiss what Captain Marvel got wrong. But with some of its core heroes, in terms of origin, they stuck to much of the script. T'Challa is an African king and living in this advanced nation with vibranium. Thor is in Asgard. Iron Man built his first suit in a cave. Hulk became Hulk by the same script. They changed some things out, but the core of the main characters are there. Though not without error, nobody is expecting it to be exactly like the comics, and the universe changes don't really excuse destroying of legacy. But Captain Marvel not only makes no sense from a comic perspective, it craps on two other prominent heroes. Monica Rambeau was the second Captain Marvel and the first female Captain Marvel, though her powers had nothing to do with the Kree like Miss Marvel and of course OG Captain Marvel. I will give you that. She actually didn't know anything about Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel, of course, when she appeared and had all those powers. And this is why the storyline is so stupid in the movie, as they completely disrespected Monica by making Carol the Great White Hope and really like this aunt figure to Monica as if she looks up to her. And the most criminal thing is Mar-Vell being changed into a female when he is the OG Captain Marvel and the first one to ever defeat Thanos in that Cosmic Cube arc. So when it comes to the source material, they didn't just bring in a hero nobody liked, they actually disrespected two other comic book characters in the process. One that was way more popular than Carol, and that's the OG Captain Marvel, Mar-Vell. And if we talk continuity in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the movie makes little to no sense with their excuses as to why she actually exists, and some of the details make little to no sense. The Tesseract somehow got from Howard Stark to Mar-Vell without Fury knowing it existed. And the first Iron Man, Coulson, was having trouble with the name of S.H.I.E.L.D. because he would like spell it out. But somehow back in the day before those events, he had no problem calling it S.H.I.E.L.D. They had all sorts of emergencies in multiple movies, but only now does Fury page Captain Marvel after he's about to disappear. The remaining Avengers somehow find the damn pager. I don't know how they found the damn pager, but they found it and they somehow knew that it was Fury's, yet they had no idea what it was. And of course, Carol wasn't someone that disappeared due to Thanos' snap. Captain America was supposedly the first Avenger, right? And his movie is set in the damn 40s. And they call him the first Avenger, yet now the Avengers Initiative was named after Carol. And there's a long list of other silly things that contradict some events in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So from the comics, it's out of place, and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's out of place and forced and lazily written. And to top it off, it was predictable in terms of theme. The actress called Captain Marvel a feminist movie, and that's how it really was promoted as such. And that's really what it is. But not the good kind of feminist, not the Wonder Woman kind. It's the lazy Mary Sue feminist that's trying to convince you that she's ever so valuable, right? We get corny cockpit jokes and 10 minutes worth of flashbacks of Carol as a kid doing things and being told she really can't do it, and they're laughing at her because she's a female. Of course, she overcomes. And then the last fight scene is they're fighting to just a girl by no doubt, and I think this speaks to why it exists. Here's my theory. Marvel doesn't have that really powerful and prominent, strong, standalone female character like DC does in characters like Wonder Woman. DC also has like Catwoman and others that are villains, but they don't need team affiliations. They can stand on their own. Marvel has female characters, but for the most part, they're mainly affiliated with teams like X-Men or Avengers, though of course Rogue, Jean Grey, and Storm are far more notable and are more popular than Carol Danvers. It's clear that they were really trying to make it a point to change this, right? When they made, Carol Danvers Captain Marvel in 2012, I believe. And they committed to backing this character even though everybody, or seemingly everybody, rejected her, and it's obvious in the fact that she's had multiple reboots, thus multiple cancels. This is artificial, and she's the hero that nobody asked for. Rather than having some organic growth, Marvel tried to force her onto everybody, and they were really committed to this, and they were going to write her in this movie regardless of what it took. Yes, it was announced years back that Captain Marvel was going to be a movie, but when you consider how it's written in the universe, really, man, you can tell that it's sloppy, right, and forced. And it was such an unnecessarily stupid hill to die on. And now the reviews are out. They are grasping for straws, blaming trolls, and claiming that anybody that dislikes the movie just has issues with female characters, right? That's so incredibly stupid. They wouldn't have gotten as much backlash had they went to another or with another female superhero, and they didn't try to force the issue. They already have Black Widow, who has been there since like the second Iron Man. But if they wanted to go with a powerful heroine, hello, Scarlet Witch already exists in your universe. She's one of the most powerful female characters, and she's an OG. And she was one of the really remaining characters that didn't disappear in the original Infinity Gauntlet arc. I certainly would have been fine with a Scarlet Witch movie, but instead, you gave us a character nobody likes, and then you screwed up the OG Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau. Let's be clear, they unnecessarily botched this, and if they had producers that had any sort of sense, they could have pleased both comic book fans and the normies, because the normies don't give a damn about the source material anyway. Thus, why they have no problem with these random changes and the blatant disrespect. They have no connection to these characters. If you wanted a female character to play a prominent role and at least have some historical context, why not just keep running with Gamora? But you killed her off. That would have had, or more so, that would have really gave you a chance to bring in Adam Warlock, hell, who you already alluded to existing because she and Adam Warlock were lovers. Instead, you went with her being loved by Star-Lord. You also could have brought in Moondragon if you really wanted someone with like powers that was a female hero, because she is technically the daughter of Drax the Destroyer, and she was raised by the father and brother of Thanos, both Mentor and Eros. And she's bisexual, so you could have checked all your little diversity boxes in the process of bringing in Moondragon. But no, you gave us an unliked character, forced her narrative in the universe, put an agenda behind it, and that's why you're getting such polarizing reactions. I don't know who these fools got working with them over at Marvel Studios, but they're the ones that dug this ditch. Hell, you could have hollered at me and I could have set you up with some source material to avoid this backlash from different sectors. But I honestly think that someone higher up really tried to force this character into being embraced. The character is generic, she sucks, the current run of comic books sucks, these both suck, and this is why Captain Marvel has been canceled like 90 times. Yet for some reason you thought it was going to go over smoothly to introduce the least liked version of Captain Marvel, slide her in the most important and climactic part of your cinematic universe while crapping on like the first and second, person or people to rock the moniker of Captain Marvel. What's the worst that could have happened?